Space, a final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
Hello, Trekkie Dave here. This is actually a request from a friend of mine. My friend Chris is a huge Marvel fan, and he liked my Marvel video, and he wanted me to do a top 10 video for the MCU. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. That's no problem. So I'm going to pick a bunch of different topics of top 10. So last night I sat down and wrote top 10 for Marvel, top 10 for DC, Star Trek, Star Wars, and also Discovery, but I might leave the Discovery for when I do a Discovery episode, which I want to do soon. So let's start off here. So this is my top 10 Star Trek films of all time. So first off, I think you guys already know what my first film on this list will be. My first film is, of course, 1979's Star Trek, the motion picture, the greatest Trek film ever.
Decker, don't! Jim, I want this. As much as you wanted the Enterprise, I want this.
Then is the second greatest Trek film ever, number 2, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan from 1982. And that one is directed by Nicholas Meyer.
15 seconds, everyone. Khan, how do we know you'll keep your word?
Oh, I've given you no word to keep, Admiral. In my judgment, you simply have no alternative.
I see your point. Stand by to receive our transmission. Assume lock phasers on target and await my command. Phasers locked.
Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes. Now, Mr. Spock.
Sir, our shields are dropping.
Raise them!
I can't!
Where's the override? The override!
Fire. Fire.
Fire! Fire! We can't fire, sir!
Why can't you?
They've damaged the proton control and the warp drive. We must withdraw.
No!
No,
No!
we must! Enterprise will wait. She's not going anywhere.
And then my third favorite Star Trek film would be the best of the Next Generation films, which would be Star Trek First Contact. Okay?
Come out of war. I need to know exactly what's been happening.
We just lost contact with Deck 16. Communications, internal sensors, everything. I was about to send a security team to investigate.
No. Seal off Deck 16. Post security teams at every access point.
Aye, sir.
Mr. Hawk, before we lost internal sensors, what were the exact environmental conditions in main engineering?
Atmospheric pressure was 2 kilopascals above normal, 92% humidity, 39.1 degrees Celsius.
39.1 degrees Celsius. Like a Borg ship. They knew their ship was doomed. Our shields were down. Somehow they transported over here without being detected. They'll assimilate the Enterprise, and then Earth. Carter Riker. Enterprise to away team. Respond.
Sir, command control is being rerouted through main engineering. Weapons, shields, propulsion.
Quickly, Mr. Data, lock out the main computer.
I have isolated the main computer with a fractal encryption code. It is highly unlikely the Borg will be able to break it.
The Borg have cut primary power to all decks except 16.
The Borg won't stay on Deck 16.
My fourth favorite film is also directed by Nicholas Meyer, who did Star Trek II, and that would be Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Love that film. I love the way Nicholas Meyer in that film, it's very different from The Wrath of Khan, which is interesting. Because with The Wrath of Khan, Nicholas Meyer was capturing that whole Horatio Hornblower, Napoleonic Wars kind of vibe. So like with the costuming and everything. He basically took Star Trek, it's set in the future, but from costuming to everything, he brought in a whole kind of swashbuckling feel to it, which was really cool. With The Undiscovered Country, he didn't really do that. It was more of a cultural thing where he addressed the Klingons and the Federation and so forth. And you had things like the Klingon prison and just all of that. It was just so well done. I love the way the president of the United Federation of Planets, his office is in Paris. And you have this kind of old-looking office, but it's also technically advanced. I thought that was really cool. I mean, it's basically the best that Nicholas Meyer always does, where he brings elements from the past and incorporates them into this futuristic world. He's the only person I can really think of in Star Trek that's done that. With Roddenberry, it was always futuristic. It never really took too much from the past. The only scene I can think of in Roddenberry's Star Trek that kind of did that was the tram station scene in Star Trek The Motion Picture. I love that scene. The way the tram station kind of had a Roman kind of look to it with the stonework and the giant pillars and stuff. You kind of had the feeling like this was this timeless culture, sort of. Like the way the civilians were dressed, they were dressed sort of like Roman civilians would be 2,000 years ago. I thought that was kind of cool in Star Trek The Motion Picture. But Nicholas Meyer's a little bit different that way, but kind of brings the same sort of vibe. Okay, and then my fifth favorite Star Trek film, in my opinion, the best of the Kelvin films or the JJ films, and that would be Star Trek Beyond. I love Star Trek Beyond. I actually think Star Trek Beyond is a really underrated film. It's a good Star Trek film, and I like the way it incorporates Star Trek values into the film and how it is different from the TOS films, but has a similar look that it just fits right in. It's perfect. Okay, number 6 for me would be Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Love that film. That's the one with the whales. It's more of a comedy, really, than a science fiction film, but it's a great film, and it's pure Nicholas Meyer. He didn't direct that one. Leonard Nimoy did, but he wrote a lot of the screenplay. And it's very similar to Meyer's film that he made right before Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. That was called Time After Time. And in Time After Time, H.G. Wells uses a time machine to propel himself to San Francisco, America in the 1980s. And in Star Trek 4, the crew goes back in the past to the San Francisco of the 1980s. So it's kind of similar in that kind of way. Okay, my next one may be a bit of a surprise to people, but I absolutely love this film. And I think there's a lot going on in this film. And yes, I think it's a Christmas movie. My number 7 film is Star Trek Generations. It's a TNG film, and I love it. I love the whole Picard arc in that, where Picard has a major loss in his life at the beginning of the film, and then he enters sort of a heaven world, kind of, something called the Nexus, which I think definitely is a metaphor for heaven. And just the lighting in that movie and just everything, that's a much better film than it's generally regarded to be. I love Star Trek Generations. It's my second favorite of the Next Generation films by far. And for me, it lands on number 7, okay? Number 8 for me is the J.J. Abrams Star Trek 09. I love that film. As a standalone film just by itself, you know, I don't know. But as a change up for Star Trek at that time, I thought it was brilliant. It made Star Trek kind of cool again. I love the Spock-Uhura relationship. I thought Carl Urban just nailed it as Dr. McCoy. He was so awesome. And I thought Chris Pine did a really good job as Captain Kirk as well. I like the idea that the timeline has been reset, so we don't have to follow canon. We can break away from canon if it seems appropriate. And I thought they did a really good job with that. I really enjoyed it. It's a good film. In my opinion, it's a bit of an underrated film. But I love the idea of a Kirk that was never pushed by his father because his father's not there. So he kind of wanders, sort of. He's not focused like the Kirk we know was. So he enters Starfleet a lot later. And I love the whole Christopher Pike element in that film. I thought it was really well done. The actor that played Christopher Pike, and how Christopher Pike assumes a father figure role for Kirk. I thought that was really well done as well. Okay. My next one, number 9. Love this film. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Great film. Stealing the Enterprise, the music for that sequence, and just the way that sequence is shot is some of the best work that Nimoy did as a director in the Star Trek movies.
Danger. Space doors are closed. Danger. Danger. Space doors are closed.
Cleared space doors.
Stand by, tractor beam.
Tractor beam. Aye.
Now, he tries to get away with warp drive. He's really in for a shock.
And this one might surprise people a bit, but my number 10 is actually Star Trek Nemesis. I know that Nemesis is a really hated movie, and I get it, like I understand, but I do think it's interesting how the film is so action-oriented. I kind of appreciated it for that. But also the biggest thing about that film that I find interesting is when you really analyze that movie, it's basically an interpretation of Dracula. Shinzon is Dracula. His viceroy is a vampire. And the whole story element of that film is he's basically preying upon the Rikers. So at the beginning of the movie, Troy and Riker get married. Deanna and Will get married. So they're basically playing the Hawkers. And in it, Dracula begins to basically stalk them, right? Just like in the novel, the Bram Stoker novel. And that whole scene, that whole mind rape scene with Troy, I know that's it's a pretty offensive scene and everything. But when you take it from the vantage point of Dracula, it actually kind of makes narrative sense, because in the Dracula novel by Bram Stoker, that happens, where he has a mental connection to Mina, and he's able to connect with Mina in that way, and Mina is able to use that connection for them to hunt Dracula down at the end. And the scene where Troy takes control of the censor board from Worth, and she knows where the Shinzon ship is, that's right out of Dracula. So yeah, so next time you watch that movie, just think of that. If you've ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's basically a version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know that sounds crazy, but when you watch the movie, if you have that in mind, it actually makes sense. So hopefully you got something out of it. If you did get something out of it, can you please subscribe? And most importantly, can you hit the thumbs up? The reason why I'm saying that, I've noticed on my channel that some of my videos have been viewed over 200 times, but when you look at the actual thumbs up, there's like 5. So what that's telling me is people are watching the video, but they're either not liking it or they're not hitting the thumbs up. They don't realize to hit it. And I believe the way the algorithm works is that it looks at that when it decides whether the video goes off anywhere and gets on other feeds. And if it's been watched 200 times and there's only 5 thumbs up, then I think it's telling the algorithm that people didn't like the video. That's what I think is going on. So if you could please hit the thumbs up, I think that one's important. That would be great. And if you leave a comment, I will respond. I do appreciate that too. Hopefully you like what I'm doing here. I'm enjoying doing it. It's occupying my time mentally. It's keeping me, I think it's keeping my cognitive ability. I just completed my first full week of radiation and chemo. And it was kind of dicey, I'll be honest. I started last Friday, and I started getting bad side effects pretty immediately. And by Tuesday, I was quite sick and getting a little bit concerned. And at the cancer clinic at the University of Alberta, on Tuesday, they adjusted my medication, and I began to feel better. So I feel a lot better now than I did, but I was getting a little bit worried there. So yeah, it's hard and everything, but I'm really enjoying this, and I'd like to keep doing it. So if you like what you're seeing, and if you think I'm bringing anything new, please hit the thumbs up and the subscribe. That would be terrific. And if you have any suggestions too in the comment section, like I said, this video today came from my friend Chris, who wanted me to do a top 10 for Marvel after I did my Black Widow review or comments or whatever, defending Marvel. So if there's something that you want that way, like you're like, oh, I would love to see that or this or whatever, then please let me know, because yeah, you know, it's not like everything is set going forward forever here. Like if somebody has a really good idea on something that they'd like to see, I think I can incorporate it in, and I'll spend the time to do it. So please do that. So here. So Trekkie Dave signing off. God bless y'all.